Oral questions by members.
Member for Abbotsford West.
Today, the Sassy family is here in the legislature, wife and the sons of Darshan Singh Sassy, who was murdered in Abbotsford on October 27th in front of his family home. During Darshan's vigil, more extortion shootings were happening in real time. The family has said it plainly many times, and I quote, "We do not need more promises. We need strong, immediate, enforceable action. The government is failing in its most basic duty to keep its citizens safe," end quote. Can the minister stand up today and explain directly to this family why Darshan's killer is still at large and communities are still under attack?
Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and my thanks to the member opposite to the family. I'd like to begin by speaking directly to the Sassy family, who I had an opportunity to meet at the vigil earlier this month, to extend my heartfelt condolences on the loss of your beloved husband and father. I should also confirm, though, that Mr. Sassy's murder remains under investigation by the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team. At the vigil, I heard directly from community members about the impacts that extortion is having on communities, not only in Surrey and Abbotsford, but in communities across Canada as well. But an attack on residents of Surrey or Abbotsford really feels like an attack on all British Columbians. People, safety, and feeling of safety is our top priority, and it's this that is guiding our urgent and steadfast response to extortion crimes. Standing up the BC Extortion Task Force to ensure coordinated and comprehensive response, surging additional resources on the ground to deter and prevent these crimes. Tomorrow, the Premier and BC will be hosting a first in Canada, a trilateral meeting dedicated to the topic of extortion that is tormenting our communities, not only in BC, but across Canada. I had a chance to connect with my federal counterpart today, who reflected that he's looking forward to learning from BC, who is leading the country in our coordinated response with law enforcement and also with Canada Border Service agencies to ensure that every tool is available to stop these crimes, disrupt these crimes, hold perpetrators to account. I know that communities are looking for arrests, charges, deportations. That is what we are looking for and our expectation, and why we are standing with police and standing with communities every single day. And will continue to do so until our communities are safe and perpetrators are brought to justice.
Member, you have supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, let me just make it very clear. Darshan Sassy's murder was not linked to extortion. And the police in our city and in Surrey are looking for more tools. They want more tools. And one of them would be to name the names of the people that were extorted so they know who they are. But on an extortion note, another constituent who's come into my office, Jazz Aurora, owner of Highway King Transport, has received over 100 extortion calls and attacks, over 100 extortion calls and attacks on his property after refusing a $2 million demand. The Sassy family has warned us, and I quote, "Communities are now openly discussing how to defend themselves. People have lost faith in their government's ability to protect them," end quote. Through the Speaker to the Premier of this province, how did community safety collapse so badly under this government that families feel abandoned, criminals feel untouchable, and British Columbians are now taking about defending themselves personally because this NDP government will not?
Minister.
Much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. Every day, police are closing in. And my message to those perpetrating these crimes is that police are coming for you, and we will not stop until there are arrest charges or deportations in accordance with laws as appropriate. And my message to community is that we are standing with you. Our number one priority is your safety, and we will continue our work with urgency and with steadfast collaboration with all levels of law enforcement and all levels of government until our communities are safe.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by thanking Prime Minister Carney. He stood up today and said that the movement of oil from Alberta through to the coast is a priority, it's nation building, it helps to strengthen us as Canadians. It took a lot of courage to do that, and I want to thank him for doing that. And you know, the Premier of Alberta is also clearly on Team Canada, standing up for what needs to be done to strengthen this country, all of us in this country. The Premier of Saskatchewan has also stood up and said clearly he's on Team Canada. He wants to see these things happen. He wants to see what's going on. Yet we have a Premier in this province who's perfectly comfortable with subsidizing the Americans. We've got a Premier in this province who will not stand up for the unity and strength of this country. So my question, quite frankly, is pretty simple. Why is it that everybody else, including us as the Conservative Party of British Columbia, are standing up for Team Canada, and this Premier is standing up for Team Trump?
Minister of Energy.
Honourable Speaker, at this moment in Canadian history, we need, I think, for young people, for people struggling in the economy, people facing the consequence of an unprecedented action against our country by the United States, need to invest in real projects. And that has been and will continue to be our focus. Projects like the North Coast Transmission Line, which will unlock tens of billions of mining opportunities and jobs for people for generations to come. Projects like Indigenous-led projects like Siliciums and Cedar LNG, which are breaking through in a challenging time and building investment. Projects like LNG Canada 2, facing a final investment decision this year, a real project with real processes. I understand, Honourable Speaker, the value of performative politics and MOUs about projects that don't exist. But the way you're on Team Canada, is to support real jobs, real mining jobs, real jobs in British Columbia. This province is leading the country in projects because we're focused on the real, Honourable Speaker, and we will continue to do so.
Member has supplemental.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, you know, one thing I did also see that came out of this, which I think is a good thing out of the MOU and the announcement by the Prime Minister, as well as the Premier of Alberta, is that British Columbia would be invited to partake in conversations with First Nations in British Columbia. At least British Columbia will at least get some part of being at the table. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about Team Canada, we need to be talking about the benefits for British Columbians. This has substantial benefits for British Columbians. This government has said very clearly that they don't see benefits of an oil pipeline coming through British Columbia. They've said very clearly they don't see how British Columbia would see the opportunities that come from this. Yet the Prime Minister himself stood up today and said, and I quote, "Substantial economic benefits for British Columbia will come from this MOU, will come from this project coming forward." So a simple question, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, through the Premier of this province. Is he calling the Prime Minister a liar?
Minister of Energy.
You know, Honourable Speaker, I think this time, as all times do, but this time in particular, requires seriousness. And that's why this government is behaving seriously to promote the economic interests of British Columbia and Canada. There is a difference between a real project, like the LNG projects that didn't happen before this government came to office and have happened now. There's a difference between the North Coast Transmission Line, which they oppose, a project of national interest, which members of the opposition from the, Honourable Speaker,
Members, order. Minister.
the North Coast Transmission Line, which unlocks the future for British Columbia, and which they oppose, Honourable Speaker. They oppose, Honourable Speaker. They are against it, Honourable Speaker. They are in favour, Honourable Speaker.
Members.
They are in favour, Honourable Speaker, because of some ideological opposition to clean energy, which has powered BC's economies for generations. They are against the North Coast Transmission Line. They are against, Honourable Speaker, power projects in British Columbia, surely of national interest, Honourable Speaker.
Members.
They are against, Honourable Speaker, the substantive actions we're taking. Well, we are, Honourable Speaker, fighting for the future and for hope for young British Columbians. And that means projects like NCTL. That means Indigenous-led projects like Cedar LNG. That means mining projects across the province. That means real projects with real prospects for success. It is not, Honourable Speaker, it is not a project,
Members. Members, order, please. Minister will conclude.
Well, Honourable Speaker, and I hope their screaming doesn't come out of my time, Honourable Speaker, but I would say this. We in British Columbia are fighting for a better future for BC and for Canada. And that means fighting for real projects that exist in time and space, Honourable Speaker. We will continue to fight for that, defend the interests of our coast, and defend the interests of British Columbians.
House Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Talk about nation-building projects. Let's talk about a BC destroying project that we need to address. Drug poisoning is now the leading cause of death for British Columbians aged 19 to 59, killing more people each year than homicides, suicides, and car crashes combined. The BC Human Rights Commission has been unequivocal. They're independent. This crisis is a human rights violation driven by toxic supply, structural inequities, and systematic discrimination, not voluntary substance use. The solution is simple, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues in the opposition will probably react the wrong way. The solution is a regulated alternative to the toxic supply. So through you, Honourable Speaker, to the Minister of Health, will this government listen to the experts, evidence and science, and expand access to prescribed or regulated alternatives?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the member for the question. Thank you for the focus on a toxic drug supply that is killing people, that is impacting families, communities across this province, and that continues to devastate us all. That's why we must all turn our attention to everything that we can do to help separate people from the toxic drugs, the street supply that is out there. Mr. Speaker, that's why this government has been so focused on expanding access to treatment and recovery options for individuals. Mr. Speaker, prescribed alternatives are part of a suite of strategies to help keep people alive so that we can help move them into treatment and recovery, so that people can get on the road to recovery, Mr. Speaker. At the same time, it's vitally important we continue to use every tool. This is one tool, Mr. Speaker. We're committed to building out this continuum of care for people, to expanding the number of bed-based treatment beds. Mr. Speaker, to expanding the options for people living in rural communities, to making sure that youth get the intervention and the prevention, the education that they need to understand that toxic drugs, that drugs are bad. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue this work. We're going to continue this work as part of that continuum of services for people so that we can do everything we can, keeping people alive, getting them on the road to recovery, helping them heal, recover, and be the people that they need to be and want to be with their families and in their communities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week in the Cowichan Valley, a shelter ran out of naloxone after an estimated 80 toxic drug poisonings in just 24 hours. We've spoken with pharmaceutical manufacturing companies here in BC that are prepared to create nasal naloxone in this province at a fraction of the cost we're currently paying. While British Columbians pay from up to $80 for a dose, other provinces offer it free. This is totally unacceptable. Over 6,000 people in this province have died since this Premier became the leader of the NDP. Each one of these deaths was a policy failure. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, will you work with local manufacturers to produce nasal naloxone in BC? And if not, how will you ensure that every service provider has enough? Thank you.
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you too to the member for pointing out another important tool in that suite of strategies to combat the toxic drug crisis, and that is take-home naloxone kits. Mr. Speaker, whether intramuscular or nasal naloxone, we want to make sure that everybody who needs it, who wants it, has access to it. And what happened in the Cowichan Valley last week was just devastating to see, and another example of how the illicit drug supply is changing all the time, and that is why we have to continue. We have to double down on the services that we're providing to people to separate them from that toxic drug supply. Now, I want to make sure the member knows that Island Health looked into that directly. They ensured that the shelter, that the housing, suppliers, providers have what they need. Mr. Speaker, we have undertaken a pilot study looking at nasal naloxone. I'll have more to say about that soon. We are willing to work with manufacturers to look at the options for producing that here in BC to make sure that it is in the hands of people to save people's lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
House Leader of the Fourth Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What happens when left-wing fanatics take over the union representing your province's teachers? Well, you get Queering Outdoor Education, the latest module made by the BCTF for kindergarten students. And I quote, "Colonization and white supremacy culture have worked in opposition in nature, in land theft, anti-Indigenous racism, resource exploitation, and seeing nature as objects from which to profit. As well, colonization has offered a pseudoscience narrative of binary gender as exemplified by the saying birds and bees." Did you catch that, Mr. Speaker? The birds and the bees? Well, they're racist now. My question to the minister, does she agree with the BCTF that kids should be queering the outdoors?
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I really have to begin by saying that it is truly such a shame that this member continues to use their place of privilege in this House to ask these type of questions. We here on this side of the House believe that every student in every school should feel welcome. They should feel loved and they should feel included, no matter where they come from, who their parents are, what their race is, what their background is, what their gender is. And we're going to continue to stand up for that diversity here in BC because that's what makes us special. We are going to support children who are the most vulnerable in our schools, who are the most likely to self-harm, to commit suicide, to do damage. We are going to stand up for those kids. We are going to tell those kids we love them, we see them, and we support them. And I'm so disappointed that this member continues to use their position of privilege to bring these children down.
Member has supplemental.
A shocking response, yet not surprising. The NDP is indoctrinating your kids too. Their own curriculum guidance instructs that students should, quote, challenge and decenter colonial structures, knowledge systems, and hierarchies. Our province was a British colony, Mr. Speaker. This legislature, a colonial structure, and the Premier is at the top of its hierarchy. Mr. Speaker, my challenge is for the Premier himself. Will he take his own minister's advice, decenter himself, and vacate this oppressive colonial structure?
Minister of Education.
You know, Honourable Speaker, last year, or the year prior, I can't remember offhand, we had to bring in access zone legislation to protect children in schools, to protect educators in schools from being bullied, from being harassed, from being shouted at, full of hate, full of misinformation while in their school. It's to protect them from people like these members in this House that the leader of the opposition brought into this House. We have to protect our kids from that. And we're going to continue to do that, Honourable Speaker. We are going to continue to focus on policies that are grounded in the human rights codes of British Columbia, which protect these kids from those kind of questions and that kind of hate.
Member for Surrey Cloverdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's a discrepancy related to the Surrey policing transition timeline. In a statement released November 19th, Deputy Commissioner Dwayne McDonald said the RCMP will provide services in Surrey, quote, until our full withdrawal by November 2026, end quote. In fact, the agreement for the RCMP to provide policing support in Surrey, which was signed by the province, the RCMP, and Public Safety Canada, ends in November 2026. Surrey Police Service says the Phase 3 of policing transition won't be complete until 2027. And their chief has stated that he did not agree to the province's timeline. Mr. Speaker, not only will this discrepancy have significant cost implications for taxpayers, but it also increases uncertainty for frontline officers and municipalities who are waiting for these RCMP officers to transfer. Can the Premier tell Surrey residents when the policing transition will be complete? And has the province secured a new formal agreement to have the RCMP continue to provide their support?
Solicitor General.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. Public safety in Surrey is a top priority for our government, and the province continues to supervise this transition. The transition is progressing with the SPS now in 3 of 5 districts. There are now over 600 SPS officers on the ground. 160 have been hired this year. There are over 350 RCMP officers. In fact, there have never been more police officers on the ground in Surrey. We have had an agreement that the RCMP will be in place as long as needed to ensure the safe transition and the safe takeover of the SPS of the remaining districts. We are continuing a phased and gradual approach to this, which the province continues to oversee, which is designed to maintain public safety and a continuation of services until SPS is stood up and ready to take on policing for the entire city. The safety of residents of Surrey is the top priority and will continue to be so throughout the transition.
Member supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for the answer. And yet there is no formal agreement to keep the RCMP supporting services in Surrey beyond November 29, 2026. But, Mr. Speaker, it's this government's mishandling and incompetent oversight of the police transition that's caused a recruitment, retention, and training crisis. And the extended timeline is going to cost taxpayers and add uncertainty for frontline officers, all while they're trying to deal with an unprecedented extortion crisis. There's now more than 100 cases of extortion in Surrey. We have an increase in shootings of more than 100% year to date. 3 people injured by gunfire and extortion-related shootings. Victims attacked more than once. Their homes and businesses repeatedly shot. Puneet Sandar, Vice President of the South Asian Business Association of BC, says that the recent extortions have caused fear from owners of businesses who no longer question if, but when they will be targeted. Will the Premier admit today that his government has completely botched the police transition and put our local police behind the 8 ball?
Minister.
Thank you very much. I disagree completely with the member's characterization of the transition, which, as I've said, is continuing to progress and continuing to be overseen by the province. I'd also like to emphasize that all parties, the SPS, the RCMP, the City of Surrey, the federal government, and the province have been around the table throughout the transition and will continue to be so as we continue to oversee the transition and ensure that the safety of residents is a top priority. The member also touched on extortion, and I recognize the fear and that this is caused for all residents of Surrey and communities facing extortion, the very real impacts on families and businesses. Nobody should feel intimidated or unsafe on the streets, in their homes, or in their workplaces. And this government will work every day with our policing partners and all partners of government. This is precisely why BC has convened the trilateral meeting that we are hosting in Surrey tomorrow, bringing together all levels of government. British Columbia is leading this work and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Peace River South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. British Columbians, especially in the north, are watching while billions in potential investment leave because this government continues to send mixed and contradictory signals on resource development. While serious discussions were underway regarding a northern pipeline corridor, British Columbia was once again not at the table. Can this Premier explain why his government was excluded from recent high-level negotiations on northern pipeline development, negotiations that directly affect jobs, investment certainty, and long-term export capacity for our province?
Minister of Energy.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. And I think I noted in the previous answer to questions from the opposition that what we're focused on, I want to talk about the North, because I believe the Northwest will be the centre, not just of economic development in British Columbia, but in Canada. What we're focused on are projects that are real and tangible and will go forward. Projects like the North Coast Transmission Line, which my friend in the opposition opposes, which will lead to mining projects my friends in the opposition oppose, Honourable Speaker, which leads, Honourable Speaker,
Members,
to the electricity required to ensure that Indigenous-led projects that are approaching final investment decisions will go forward in our country, Honourable Speaker, and in our province. We are focused, Honourable Speaker, we are focused on the real. And we are not focused, Honourable Speaker, on MOUs that I'm sure will help the Premier of Alberta get through her weekend convention, Honourable Speaker. But MOUs, Honourable Speaker, that are not about real projects. You look at the MOU and you understand the project doesn't exist in time and space today, Honourable Speaker. We're going to fight for jobs for British Columbia, for our coast in British Columbia, for our economy in British Columbia, and we're going to lead Canada in economic development. We're not talking about imaginary projects here in BC. We're talking about real projects.
Member for Prince George Mackenzie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's pretty on brand for the member who delivered the Kinder Surprise to oppose oil and gas infrastructure. The Prime Minister had to put BC projects on a federal fast-track list because this NDP government has broken BC's permitting system. The federal list includes LNG projects and now a new pipeline declared in the national interest. Meanwhile, the BC NDP excluded all oil and gas infrastructure in their own so-called fast-tracking bills. During Bill 15 debate last spring, the infrastructure minister said, quote, "There are literally thousands and thousands of backlog permits for Sorry, I'll repeat that, Mr. Speaker. There are literally thousands and thousands of backlog permits in government right now," end quote. So with that in mind, permits for LNG projects and pipelines will languish at the back of the line. Why is this Premier risking BC jobs and making Canada weaker by standing in the way of getting our nation's energy to global markets?
Minister of Energy.
Honourable Speaker, in the spring, we introduced legislation to improve access to decisions and to get projects going in this province. When we introduced legislation, and what did the honourable member do? What did the honourable member do? He opposed it, Honourable Speaker. He opposed it for some sort of strange ideological reason, Honourable Speaker.
Members, it's almost over. Calm down. Minister will continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. So they're against the North Coast Transmission Line, which serves the member's constituency and constituency across the north. They're against it, Honourable Speaker. They're against clean energy policies. The Leader of the Opposition calls them unicorn farts. They're against those.
Members.
Honourable Speaker, I can wait a long time to speak. We'll let them calm down.
Members will come to order now. Minister will conclude.
Honourable Speaker, of course, the honourable member was, like many of his colleagues, a Liberal before he was a Conservative. And he knows, and I know, Honourable Speaker, he knows, and I know, Honourable Speaker, that there were no LNG projects in BC when the BC NDP took office. Zero. A lot of noise, Honourable Speaker, a lot of noise like you hear when you talk about MOUs, Honourable Speaker, but no action, no results. The party of no results, Honourable Speaker. Since we came to office, Honourable
Members, what? Members, stop it. Members, quiet, please. Minister.
Member asked about LNG. His record is $0 for 0 projects. Our record is 4 projects for $60 billion under construction, Honourable Speaker. That's the difference. That's the difference, Honourable Speaker, between noise and action. And that's why they're going to be over on that side of the House for a long, long time.
The bell ends the question period.